Welcome back, and you are tuned into the Nafeesa Dangor Show, where, of course, we're inspiring you this Thursday afternoon to get out of your rut, to get over your challenges, and, of course, to change your mindset. And to help us with that this afternoon, we have Ruth Ancer, a clinical psychologist. Thank you so much for joining us, and a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is only ours. Ruth, talk to us. I think, especially during this very difficult COVID period, I think people are actually, of course, struggling along with many instances as such. And, if you ask them to see a clinical psychologist, there's always that taboo that they think only people that are probably not or right upstairs need to go and see a clinical psychologist.
Yes. Well, just to say that, there are all types of psychologists who people can see, clinical, counseling, educational, there are all types of therapists. And, it's interesting that for some people, there's still a sense, perhaps their own internalized stigma of going to see someone. However, when we, are struggling with a broken arm or a sore back, we'll go to physiotherapy, we'll go to doctors. And to look after our emotional and mental health is vital. It's as important as looking after any other part of us. And in fact, most people who go see therapists are going to see therapists to just help them talk through and cope with difficult things in their life. We don't say to people who need, heart medication or, they've got diabetes to say, no, you're weak if you go see a doctor, you need to fix it yourself. And it's the same with emotional difficulties. Going to speak to someone who's trained to help you cope with things that are really difficult. We deal with so many stresses. Is such a courageous and brave thing to do. And I don't think it shows any weakness. I think it shows strength.
Most definitely, because it actually, you learn to know that there's a support structure out there. And I think a lot of the times people don't realize that you sometimes need that direction. You need somebody that can just basically help you get directed in your situation to wherever you want to head to. And a lot of the times, I think we lose hindsight of that because, especially now with this COVID-19 period, I think people's anxiety levels have taken over that I think they've even lost sense of direction or when they really want to head to or how to even get out of that anxiety mode that they're actually in.
Absolutely. I think we can get so overwhelmed with everything that's happening. And having, a safe space where you can talk about whatever is bothering you with someone who's not there to judge you, someone who's not there to, who's not there to minimize what you're going through, but someone is there to help you find ways of managing, of understanding, and of dealing with things in a way that assists. We all find ways to deal with stress, but a lot of the ways we find are not very helpful. And, when we are not dealing with the things that are bothering us, it will come out in our relationships with other people. So we either become withdrawn and avoidant, or we become irritable, and the people around us also suffer. So being able to, go for counseling with somebody who can help you understand what it is that you're finding so difficult, and help you make sense of what's happening and look at how you are coping and what you could do differently. And it's an exploration that you do together. So I can understand why people feel, they might feel uncomfortable initially if they don't know what it's going to be like. But that is going to any kind of new situation. But if you find someone that you feel comfortable with, that you feel safe with, it can make a huge difference. And it really does. It can empower you with skills to just manage you and your family and your life, so much more easily.
That is so true. And, especially during this period, I think there's a lot of people that don't know how to manage their stress. And of course, they then, eventually reach burnout. So what advice would you give them?
No, I think that when you can notice that stress is building and your usual support systems or coping mechanisms are no longer working as effectively, I would then say that might be the time to go and speak to someone. It can just be once off to get a taste of what it's like. Because sometimes just having someone who's out of the situation, I mean, having close friends and having family that you can speak to is so important. First of all, some of us don't have that. And second of all, even if we do, those people aren't always objective. So they don't always, they might come, with their own agenda. They might see things very differently. And they also, sometimes we worry about burdening other people with what we're going through because we don't want them to worry. And that is where an objective therapist comes in, where you don't have to worry about them. You can tell them whatever you need to because they're there for you. And I think people say, I can't tell my partner this, or I can't tell my mother this because I don't want them to worry. And then you hold things. And when you carry things by yourself, the load gets heavier and heavier.
That is so true. And I think a lot of people are going through that right now. They can't seem to manage with that burden that's on them, especially with the COVID-19 period. I think there's added stresses as well. So I think that's just making the situation a whole lot worse. How do they reach out to you in that way? Because, are you working during this period?
I think all therapists are working. What a lot of us are doing in order to, keep to the social distancing or the physical distancing is we're working online. So some therapists are working face-to-face as well. I'm working at the moment only online, so we're using Zoom, sometimes Skype, so sometimes WhatsApp. It really just depends. So I'm working online. And except for small children who are sometimes in my practice, obviously I can't see them online, everyone has adjusted quite well. And, I think that has worked much better than I'd initially assumed because it was new to a lot of us. But it's been, people, especially at times like this, we are dealing with stresses, fears, and anxieties that we've never dealt with before. And we're having to do so in a new way. So, there are therapists that are working. There's also like the South African Depression and Anxiety Group that has counselors. So there are places that where you can speak to counselors who you can refer. But there's also, you can ask your GP, and then you can search online. But what's very important to realize is that you might find that a certain therapist you don't feel comfortable with, and that's okay. You need to find somebody who you feel comfortable with, and that can really make a massive difference in just managing things that we've never had to deal with before.
That is so true. Talk to us about your specialties and your field, what it is that you do. I think people would like to know that as well about you, what sort of specialities you do. And so people know when there's that particular issue that they find that they come across, they can then refer themselves back to you and, of course, get the necessary advice and the help. And I think that's where people are looking now is where can they reach out? That's the first thing they ask themselves,
Right. So, I work with children, adolescents, and adults. I do individual therapy. I work from Blegari, although online at the moment. It doesn't matter where we're situated because we can reach each other. Essentially, my work is often with I deal with relationship issues, obviously depression, anxiety, stress, just things that people are struggling with. Loss, difficult situations at work. And if I'm not able to help, I certainly am able to refer to people that either specialize in areas that people need or geographically are closer to where people are.
Yes, okay. But I think it's nicer now because now that you're online, as you were saying, I think you can reach out to broader amounts of people than you could before. Because I think sometimes what happens, people find that distance is an issue. Whereas now online, you can chat to anybody just about anywhere and reach out to them and help them overcome all their challenges as such.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things about this period, even though it's been, brought on by something so frightening and there's been so much that is so stressful to deal with. It's also made us see things differently. And it's opened up I think people can reach therapists. There are people in areas that transport might be difficult, or where they are is remote. And here we're suddenly realizing that we can work with people where geographical distance and traffic is no longer an obstacle, which is marvelous.
Yeah, I think we have to look at the positive in it. It's actually made life a whole lot easier for the patient and for yourself in order to, connect and reach out and of course, sort out the possible solutions as such.
And there have been people who've said, even when lockdown is finished or when you're working face to face, it gives me, I don't have to fight traffic to get you. Is that something we can continue with? And I think that just reflects the way that our lives are going to change after this. They're never going to go exactly back, even with schooling. The schools are now, my children are at a school that has resources, and they've gone back, but they're doing a hybrid. They are doing some online school, they're doing some classes, and I think that even workplaces are also going to be changing, and that's good if we can look at what worked and keep that, but what hasn't served us and what we've learned through this, and be able to incorporate that. I think that is very, very useful.
That is so true. But you know what? What sort of advice do you have for people? Because I know there's one thing that's going around generally is that people have this element of fear and, of course, the sense
Yes.
of trauma as far as this pandemic is concerned. What sort of advice would you give them?
I think that we have to look at what our fear is and whether it's based, how realistic are our fears. A lot of times our fears are based on what we don't really understand. So certainly in terms of children going back to school, we need to look at what is the available information and then look at it as objectively as we can. And then we have to be quite pragmatic, because sometimes we get so caught up in our fears, we lose sight of what is rational. We need to be cautious, but to be immobilized by panic doesn't help us at all. So we need to find out, what do we know, and how do we know, what do we know that we can do in order to keep ourselves and the ones we love safe. So, for example, when we're speaking to our children, we shouldn't be emphasizing, if you get this virus and then, some people pass it on and some people get very sick and die. What we need to emphasize is there is a virus going around. We're still learning about how best to treat it. And in the meantime, this is what we can do to so that we reduce the chances of us getting infected and passing it on. And that is we wear masks when we're with other people, that we wash our hands, that we keep a physical distance from people that we're not in the same household with. And in that way, we can keep ourselves safe. So we need to look at what we can do and what we do know. It's fine to be anxious, but make sure, especially if you're a parent, that you don't pass that anxiety unnecessarily onto your children. You want them to know that we have to do things differently, but you don't want them to be so frightened that they become scared of the world. It's just that we now have to enter the world in a different way. And I do think we need to be cautious, but we mustn't be panicked, because that doesn't help anyone.
That's so true. What message do you have for our listeners?
I think it's about knowing it's very important to take care of yourself. And that is taking care of yourself emotionally, spiritually, physically, and not undermining the fact that when you are struggling with something emotionally, that doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. And being able to recognize that sometimes we need more resources than we have internally, that's not a weakness. That is a strength. And being able to get assistance will make you cope much better, and will also improve your relationships with the people around you. And we must never underestimate how difficult and how dangerous it is to have depression and anxiety that is not treated adequately.
That is so true.
So it
Thank you
would
so
be to
much for
take care
joining
of
us this
yourselves, to take
afternoon.
care of the people around you. Yeah, it's a pleasure. It was lovely chatting to you.
Yes, we really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us. It's definitely been very informative, and I hope this helped our listeners. We definitely will post your number on the website. So if anybody needs help, they could probably reach out to you. Thank you so much. And just, of course, stay safe and take care of yourself. And we hope to chat soon.
With pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. You too, and Sue. Excellent. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure was ours. That was Ruth Ancer, definitely giving us some insight, stress and burnout, and how to overcome some of our fears as far as this pandemic is concerned. Definitely a very informative segment, but do stay with us. We will be back with an inspirational person after this. Ziad, Ziad.